We're going to start with a piece of news. I like to feel like the people who bothered to come out and hear me speak get to be the first to hear some breaking news. While I was merchandised as a former executive at Discovery and at Best Buy, I'm here to announce that I actually took a new job yesterday, and I am now the Chief Product Officer at Leafly. So really excited about that. Happy to have some of my team here. But my journey is going to include a lot of the learnings from my leadership experiences at some of the best brands you've heard of. And I'm hoping to carry forward a lot of that learning in a new environment, in a growing business, in a disruptive market, and really take forward at scale the things that I've been able to do at large public companies in a smaller environment, pre-public company. So it still applies, but I think within this you'll find something for you, as I hope I found in my journey, that I can bring to Leafly. So the first lesson that I want to share with you is high performance is not about harmony. It's about respect. Harmony, in my mind, implies the lack of disagreement. And for product teams, you need to really funnel a collective way to disagree into your product strategy. You need to be able to challenge each other. Why are we doing this? Is this the best thing for our customers? Is this the right thing for our business? Are we creating value by doing it this way? Harmony implies that you might not be asking those tough questions. You might not be challenging the status quo. Within conflict and disruption is often where innovation resides. So being willing to be respectful in the way that you heard Gibson talk about debate, decide, and do, or Amazon talks about disagree and commit, it's that process of debating and disagreeing that actually isn't necessarily harmonious, but what strong, high-performing teams do well, right? They respect the different opinions, they look for the different opinions, and they nurture the people who bring those to the table. They also don't hire for people that all believe the same thing, because diversity of thought is as important as diversity of gender and demographics. You want to have people bring different experiences to challenge the status quo. This is the biggest lesson I learned during my time at building the office at in Seattle for Best Buy, which is talent isn't everything. You think when you're really scaling up and you want to really build a high-performing team, you're going to get the A players. You're going to work as hard as you can to get the best people on the bus who know how to do every single thing you need them to do. The interesting thing is that that isn't enough to be successful in a team. And the way I learned that was when I first started at Apple, my boss said to me, "We know you could do the job, that's why we hired you. The real question is, can you do the job here?" Talent is only part of that equation. The real skill is how do you fit in, how do you amplify, how do you encourage, and how do you grow, right? Your ability to be open to new learnings isn't that you're bringing only your past experience to bear. It's so important that you look for all of the person in the hiring process because they bring all of that every day to work. Every leader casts a shadow. This is a big lesson in the leadership training at T-Mobile that I got, which really is something that you have to appreciate by living. You can hear that and you can think you project a shadow. We all have sort of digital shadows in our social media persona. We all think about the image that we're trying to create. But do you really know what your face is doing when someone says something you think is stupid? Do you really know what your body is doing when somebody challenges you as an authority on something? The shadow that you cast, the vulnerability that you project, the criticism that you project, all of that tells a team what to expect and what is accepted. Do you believe it's okay to actually tell someone they crapped the bed? Because that will mean that they can tell their peers when they don't think they've done well something similar. Or is there a more constructive way that you communicate when you're not getting what you need from someone? The organization really reflects the values and principles of the leader, not just by what they say and express and write in social media posts, but how they show up every day at the office. How do they wear their moods? How do they think about what they're projecting to the team in terms of the health and well-being of the environment they're working in? So this takes me to the really important part of this whole equation when talent isn't everything. When talent isn't everything, social skills, emotional IQ, charisma, all of those things really are the tools in your toolbox. How you manage emotions, how you challenge other people to do better or to meet your expectations are all the ways that you can bring someone up or put someone down. If you don't feel like you're getting enough out of your teammates, is yelling going to get them so much as encouragement might? So when you think about the extremes that you live in the day, how much of that do you cast out onto other people? One of the things that I heard once, which I thought is a great statement, is it's easier to catch an emotion than a cold. Think about that. You got on the bus today, or you went to your parking lot and someone was in your space. Now you're really ticked off. You walk into the building and the coffee pot is empty, or the dishwasher has all the coffee mugs in it and nobody's run it. Now you're really pissed off because you can't even get your coffee or your parking space. The rest of the day is probably not going to be much better for you because you've already made up your mind you're working at a deficit. Now you go home and you give a little bit of your day to your husband, and now his day doesn't feel so great. Oh, I'm so sorry, dear. That sounds like that sucked. Well, how bad do you think it really sucked? Do you understand how bad this? I mean, let me tell you some more stories, right? So the idea that we all do this, right? How we're greeted at the coffee shop that we go to, right? Whatever experience we get from some other employee in our day about how their day is going is likely to be carried into our day. So having the emotional awareness, the self-awareness to understand that that is baggage you're not only bringing with you on your day, but you're bringing into your team. And if you bring that baggage into your team, you can't be that surprised that someone is going to, even by the process of being empathetic, start to take on some of that emotion. It's kind of like the drive-by cold. I could get it with the zinc, but I really still feel a little bit in there that I'm not so happy about, right? That's the kind of feeling it can be. So forming your team is really where the work starts, right? But how do you think about how to form a team? Well, we at Best Buy thought, we gotta hire. We just gotta hire. I was the 5th hire. We knew we needed to get to 20 times that in as fast a period as we can, so hiring was the only thing we thought about. Unfortunately, we got ahead of ourselves because we actually hired only for talent and hadn't really thought in those early months about what the values, what we stood for, what mattered to us, how we want to operate as a community of people building a product we want customers to love. And how would our hiring process support that? The important part of the forming stage is that you actually realize that is where you build structure, goals, roles, and values. Because then you know what you're looking for when you recruit. Then you know what it is that's going to mean the most to your team in terms of fit, morale, and energy, right? You know what matters the most. And you heard Gibson say, and I thought this was awesome, one of the biggest things that Netflix did was publish its cultural document for all the world to see, what makes Netflix a special place, and he even indicated it was one of the best recruiting tools there was. Who doesn't want to know what the values are that you're entering into of the community you're going to be participating in 40 to 70 hours a week, maybe even 100, right? How do you fit in? Do they believe the same? And one of the things that's interesting is when you take yourself out of a situation because you actually recognize that it isn't a place where your values align. You as an employee actually have that privilege in the interview process, of course. And when I went through the process of meeting folks at Leafly, it was one of the very first things the CEO sent me was the company values. And it was a checklist for me to really see what they stood for and whether or not that aligned with my beliefs and values. It makes it so much easier for people to support each other in a work environment when those things that are core to everyone don't have to be explained day in and day out. right? They don't have to be interpreted. People understand them behaviorally. At Best Buy, when we did this, we actually created I statements that went with the tenants so that employees would see it almost as a social contract. This is what I am saying I believe in, not what the company believes in. I believe in these values and tenets. So when we kind of had this rapid hiring phase, and then we realized we really kind of had put together more of a culture of individuals rather than a high-performing team, everyone with a strong opinion about what needed to get done and how they wanted to do it, we really had to step back and think, this isn't working because we actually are more noisy than harmonious in how we handle each other, how we handle processes. And the best place for us to see that was in our employee survey. The scores were very telling. It was a punch in the stomach for me the first time I saw it, but it was the biggest eye-opening experience of my leadership career to realize those things cannot be set organically. It is critical that you purposefully and thoughtfully understand what it is you want to stand for as a team, not just as a leader, and how you want to source people who do that. The team values and tenets at Best Buy became grit and resilience. We knew instantly that being a remote office for a large Fortune 500 company in the Midwest was not going to be easy. Culturally, we were different, but also just physically, they had never run a mobile application development office in a remote location. So the things that we need, the tools, the environment, the context for our work was just not there. So the people who got frustrated and stormed out shouldn't have probably been hired in the first place. Not because they weren't great developers, but because they weren't in a place where they felt suited and supported. All right? The people who did want to come in there and build something from scratch and rub two sticks together to get fire and hold their phone up to make sure they got sick, those people had a lot of grit and resilience. Those people came with a solution to the problem. Well, I'm going to go to Starbucks, I'll upload the app from there, then I'll go. Like, people were solvers, were the people we wanted. They didn't necessarily have more development skills or more product management skills or more design skills than the people we had hired originally. But what they did have is more suitability for the environment and context in which they were going to perform. Their willingness to see that adversarial environment as an opportunity made them the right fit at that time for us at Best Buy. There's a period after forming where you do always need to storm, and part of storming is to determine the ways of working, right? The way that you resolve conflict is part of it, but how do you communicate, and what are the tools for communication, whether those are meetings or meeting notes, whether it's Slack or email. The things that you all have to come together on as a team really can create conflicts of all sizes. And at the end of the day, a day full of conflict is a day full of conflict. It doesn't matter how big they were. You just feel like everything is pushing water uphill. So how do you tolerate the conflict during this phase? How do you think about the ways to do it? I had one employee once who during conflict shut down and would sit with her arms crossed, folded over, and start tearing up because she just didn't know how to handle a confrontation. And I asked her why she was doing that, and she said, well, I'm just afraid of what I'll say. And I said, so you've replaced one bad behavior with another bad behavior, right? That's not solving the problem, right? You need to figure out how to tolerate the conflict, whether that's in a one-off with a person outside of the room, or whether it's in a more measured way of relating your concerns. But doing nothing is as bad as screaming. And to figure out the best way to tolerate a conflict, you have to be able to negotiate. You have to have a willingness to compromise. You have to think through, how do you pick the hills you're going to die on? And how are you going to stand for things individually that align with what the team needs to stand for as well? These are the difficult conversations, and companies often last in this stage far too long. You see churn in employees, you see challenges with customer satisfaction. It is inevitable your NPS scores will reflect this, right? Because the customer is trying to figure out where you're taking them, and you're struggling to figure out how you're making decisions. So this is a phase you want to work really hard not to indulge yourself in. You want to find a process and a way out, and a process that actually allows for respectful conflict, frequent debate, but the ability to get past it in a time-boxed way so that everyone has the opportunity to be heard, but then, as Gibson pointed out, someone is the decider and the team moves forward. This is a critical component. And for me, it's the most motivating thing to get out of this phase, because no one's happy during storming, right? You're not really enjoying the process of making process, but it is such a critical thing for people to go through. When you negative bond with people, you can bring people down. When you want to get out of storming collectively, you all raise each other up. It's the way to think about getting out of storming. What can we do to raise ourselves up from this place where conflict is distracting our productivity? This is one of the things that I learned really early in the stages of Best Buy while we were going through our storming phase, that we wanted to try so many team building activities. And one of the hardest things when you're small and the team is really not effectively gelling is to find a common activity, because who wants to be with somebody they don't share values with? That's like inherently flawed, that you can team build when you actually at the core don't have people you want to hang out with. And so one of the interesting things that we found was the less we tried, the more organically teams developed. And by that I mean where people had common interests, they gravitated together. And the teams actually in that scenario found that they wanted to spend much more time together because of that. Lunches were working lunches. Not they didn't have lunch, but they would go all to the food truck together, and they would have the lunch together, and they would bond together during that social time because they wanted to be together, right? The idea that the team that wants to be together will find the ways to build itself comes from that shared core of common values and tenets and beliefs and things that we all want to stand for when we're here every day, putting our time and effort in away from our families, doing something in service of someone else. We better enjoy ourselves. And to do that, we better be with people that bring the best out of us and for which we can do the same. Exiting storming requires new team skills. It really is important, but it is also important to call a spade a spade. When it's time to go, it's time to go. If your values are not aligned, if you cannot be your authentic self, if you do not feel supported in a team, you should exit yourself from the situation. But not everyone is that self-aware. And so storming and exiting storming sometimes takes decisive action on underperformers or people who are being disruptive to the team without being coachable about it. So we, in our period of time in building the office and really growing from 50 to 150 people, we had to recognize that the people who wanted to remain and who shared the values wanted to see us take decisive action against the people who were being disruptive, bullies, marginalizing some of the team members. We wanted to take a stand. But until we had a set of values, we couldn't hold those people up to it and put them in a performance process. So again, it kind of goes back to our own responsibility to declaring what it was we wanted in the hiring process to be able to enforce it right during the performance process. Norming is where we love to live, right? We kind of feel like we're in our happy place. And in this scenario, we're comfortable, right, that we're going to hit consensus. We know there might be debate, but consensus isn't about harmony, right? It's agreeing that we're moving forward with the decision, even if I don't agree with the actual decision. And the idea in that scenario that the team wins when anyone on the team wins is something that people feel earnestly when they're in the norming stage. I'm happy for someone else who has a win when my whole team's health is in a happy place. It doesn't matter to me to take the credit for what my team did. I'll elevate that person, and in kind, as part of spirit, they'll return the favor when it's my turn. I just know it because that's what we do, is we raise each other up. It's a wonderful place to be, but it isn't a place where you can just sit in glory, because you're always going to hire new people. Someone's going to go on maternity leave. You'll have a temporary worker come in. Oh, Somebody's on vacation, that work isn't getting done. Life goes on and creates ongoing obstacles, challenges, and opportunities for conflict. And it's how you develop the ways of dealing with those things that allow you to not revert to the storming stage. Facing these new challenges is the most frequent way that teams sit there thinking, we've all got it figured out. This is how we're going to work. And then comes in, right, the outside agency with a new dynamic, a new executive with a new roadmap. And all of a sudden now, what was normal isn't normal anymore. And it's the important part of really knowing that you're a high-performing team is knowing that this is something you're prepared for. You expect it. You're ready that change is going to affect the balance, equilibrium, dynamic, harmony, whatever it is that you feel you're in during that stage of norming. And what you're going to see is, I see the storm clouds on the horizon, and I'm ready for them. And this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to handle. This is how we handle people who are disruptive on our team. This is what we do, right, to build more camaraderie. These are the things that matter to us, and we're going to ensure that these changes don't destroy those, right? And the fervor for which you hold true to those things is actually palpable. I remember once we got to a point at Best Buy where I actually couldn't interview everybody in the building, which was just so crushing for me. It was the most wonderful thing to actually watch everybody come through the door and have that journey be something I was a part of, but at the point at which that became impractical and unreasonable, what I loved hearing was when I would ask somebody why they decided to join, they said it was the people. Every single person I met in the interview, I just wanted to hang out with. I wanted to work with. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's actually something someone else now can project back to us. It's palpable that we're a place where people want to be. And the benefits and the salary and the title all matter when we look at jobs, but when we think about the 40 to 100 hours a week that we think about our job, why would you want to do it with people you don't want to be around, right? And so the idea that you're going to preserve and protect that, and that the new people who come in are going to understand it and own it and opt in for it, because that's where they want to work, that's what they want out of their work day and their work life, then you really have kind of seized the moment that the team defines itself by how everyone lives the values of the team and represents them in every part of their daily journey. This is, again, one of the key things about disruption is you got to be prepared for people who are disruptive being a little bit disruptive, right? And you think about that word as having both pros and cons. And this is I love this joke, because in this way it's, well, we want some amount of change, we just don't want you to change everything, right? And what this is the balance of bringing on that continual diversity of thought. One of the things that you want to be able to do as a self-aware, high-performing team is know what your flat sides are, what you're not good at, and be willing to own them, and then look for them in the people that you hire, right? You're not looking for someone who is just coming in to be different. You're looking for someone who can fill a space on the team and bring value for the whole team to raise its game, right? So being different for different's sake isn't valuable. Being different within the culture of the team is invaluable. Make sense? Lastly, I think this is the part that really came true to me at the very end when I really looked at what we had built at that office in particular, but when I think about the journey that we went through, it boils down to benefit of the doubt. When you have a high-performing team, you're willing to give all of your teammates the benefit of the doubt. You're willing to trust in their good intentions. You're willing to have a belief that you start from a shared foundation of what you're trying to accomplish and how you want to accomplish it, so that if someone says something you don't expect, you don't react, again, with an emotion that causes some other set of triggers in that person to impact their performance, right? Everybody shows up differently. Everyone processes information differently. And if someone is not showing up the way you show up, that doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong. You might actually, through your own self-awareness, recognize they're filling a flat side of yours. And in that, they're elevating your game, right? The trust that somebody is doing something that you don't like doing, don't do well, can't do, or aren't even thinking of doing is actually a benefit to a high-performing team, because then that person really, truly has your back. So I want to thank you all for this. I definitely did a little bit of a speed walkthrough on the topic. It was an hour session when I did it at the product school. So I'm happy to go through some more detail and stories at the end and share with you any of the other personal anecdotes from my journey. I do want to say one thing before I leave. I need to give a shout out to my Best Buy team who showed up to support me today, and I really appreciate you guys a lot. And as well to my new Leafly team who's here and helping raise my game as well. I am grateful for the opportunity to get up in front of you today. I'm impressed with the turnout that you've all gotten, and I thank you for giving me this time to share with you my story.